What if the thing hurting you right now isn't actually trying to destroy you? What if it's trying to teach you something? Think about that for a second, because most of us spend our lives doing one thing whenever pain shows up. We run. We distract ourselves. We scroll. We stay busy. Anything to avoid sitting with that heavy feeling in our chest. But here's the strange part. No matter how far we run, the pain somehow follows. Different job, different relationship, different city, same feeling, same confusion, same quiet questions sitting in the back of your mind. Why does this keep happening to me? Be honest with yourself for a moment. Have you ever reached a point where you thought life would finally feel better, only to realize something still feels off? You're moving, working, living, but inside something feels unsettled. Almost like life keeps tapping you on the shoulder saying, you still haven't learned the lesson. And that's when the frustration begins. You start asking questions. Why is this happening? Why do certain patterns keep repeating? Why does pain show up exactly when you thought you were finally okay? Here's the part nobody tells you. Pain isn't random. It's information. Not punishment, not bad luck. Information. But most people never decode the message. They just try to silence the alarm. Imagine a smoke detector going off in your house. The noise is annoying, loud, stressful. Your first instinct might be to rip the batteries out just to make the sound stop. And for a moment, the silence feels good. But the fire is still there. Pain works the same way. The feeling itself isn't the real problem. It's the signal. And the signal is pointing at something deeper. But here's where things get interesting. Because most of us were never taught how to listen to pain. We were taught to avoid it, hide it, suppress it, stay positive, move on, don't think about it. Sounds helpful, right? But sometimes those phrases are just emotional duct tape. They cover the crack without fixing the foundation. Now here's a strange thought. What if the most important lessons of your life only arrive through discomfort? What if clarity doesn't come from comfort, but from friction? Wait till you hear this part. Every person who eventually finds peace, direction, or confidence goes through the same uncomfortable moment. The moment where they stop asking, how do I escape this feeling? And start asking, what is this feeling trying to show me? That single shift changes everything. But most people never reach it, because the moment pain appears, the mind does something automatic. It panics. It tells a story that sounds something like this. Something is wrong with me. My life shouldn't feel this hard. I must be failing. And the more you believe that story, the heavier the pain becomes. But this is where the real journey begins. Because pain has a strange way of forcing awareness. Think about the last time something hurt deeply. Maybe it was rejection. Maybe it was a breakup. Maybe it was failure. Or maybe it was something quieter, like feeling lost when everyone else seemed to know where they were going. That moment probably didn't feel like a lesson. It felt like chaos, confusion, maybe even unfair. But here's the question most people never ask. What if that moment was actually a turning point? Not the end of something, but the beginning of understanding something about yourself you had never noticed before. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. Pain doesn't show up because you're weak. It shows up because something in your life is out of alignment. Your values, your boundaries, your expectations, your direction. Something isn't matching who you really are, and pain is the signal. Think about it honestly. Have you ever ignored a gut feeling for too long,
only to watch things slowly fall apart? Most people have. And the strange part? Deep down, they knew something wasn't right. They just hoped the discomfort would disappear on its own. But this is where things start to shift. Because the moment you stop seeing pain as an enemy and start seeing it as a guide, your entire relationship with life begins to change. But before that realization fully lands, there's something important you need to understand. Something that explains why pain feels so overwhelming in the first place. And once you see it, you'll never look at your struggles the same way again.
Here's something most people never realize about pain. Pain isn't just a feeling. It's a messenger. And like most messengers, it keeps knocking until you finally listen. But this is where the human mind does something strange. Instead of reading the message, we argue with it. We say things like, "This shouldn't be happening. I don't deserve this. Why now?" And the more we resist the experience, the louder the pain becomes. Almost like life is saying, "Hey, you missed the point." But wait, here's where it gets interesting. Not all pain is the same. Some pain protects you. Touch a hot stove, pain teaches you instantly. You don't need a motivational speech to avoid that mistake again. But emotional pain, that's different. Emotional pain is slower, quieter, more complicated. And because it's complicated, most people misinterpret it. They think pain means something is wrong with them. But very often, pain simply means something important is trying to change. Think about growing pains. When a child grows quickly, their body aches, not because something is broken, but because something is expanding. Now here's the question. What if emotional pain works the same way? What if the discomfort you feel when life shifts is actually the pressure of growth? Let that idea sit for a moment, because if that's true, it changes how you see every difficult moment you've ever experienced. The breakup that shattered you, the rejection that embarrassed you, the failure that made you question everything. At the time, it probably felt like the world was collapsing. But now, looking back, something strange often happens. You realize those moments forced you to grow, forced you to reflect, forced you to become someone different, maybe even someone stronger. But here's the part most people won't admit. Sometimes pain shows up because we've been lying to ourselves. That relationship you knew wasn't right. That job draining the life out of you. That dream you were chasing, mostly because everyone else expected it. Pain has a funny way of exposing those quiet misalignments. And when it does, we usually react in one of two ways. We wake up, or we double down on the lie. Now here's a question worth sitting with. When pain shows up in your life, which one do you usually choose? The uncomfortable truth or the comfortable illusion? Think about it honestly, because this is where the hero's journey really begins. Not with confidence, not with clarity, but with the moment where you realize something inside your life isn't working anymore. And that realization hurts. But here's where things start to change, because pain has layers. The first layer is the event, the breakup, the mistake, the rejection. But the second layer? That's the story we tell ourselves about the event. I'm not good enough. I always ruin things. I'll never get this right. And that second layer is usually where the real suffering lives. Let me ask you something quietly. Have you ever noticed how two people can go through the exact same experience, but one person grows stronger while the other feels permanently defeated? Same event, completely different outcome. Why? Because pain itself isn't the final teacher. Interpretation is. The meaning you assign to the pain determines what it becomes, a prison or a guide. But this next realization is where everything flips. Because once you start listening to pain instead of fighting it, you begin noticing patterns. Patterns in your reactions, patterns in your choices, patterns in the situations that keep repeating. And suddenly, a new question appears. Not, why is this happening to me? But, what is this trying to show me? And that question changes the direction of your life. But here's the twist nobody expects. The answer is rarely comfortable. In fact, the answer often points back at you. Your habits, your fears, your boundaries, your beliefs. And when that realization hits, it can feel a little brutal. But it's also the moment real transformation becomes possible. Because once you see the pattern, you finally have the power to break it. And in the next part, we're going to talk about the exact moment that shift happens. The moment pain stops feeling like punishment and starts becoming a guide. And trust me, this is the part that changes everything.
There's a moment in every difficult chapter of life when something quietly shifts. At first, you don't notice it. You're still inside the storm, still replaying what happened, still asking the same exhausting question. Why did this happen to me? But then something subtle changes. The question evolves. Instead of asking why, you start asking, what now? And that small shift, that's the beginning of growth. Because pain becomes dangerous only when it traps you in the past, when your mind keeps replaying the same moment like a broken record. But once your attention moves forward, something interesting happens. Pain begins to transform into awareness. Now here's the strange thing about awareness. It's uncomfortable. Because awareness often reveals things we didn't want to admit before. Maybe you ignored your boundaries. Maybe you stayed somewhere too long. Maybe you chased validation instead of listening to your instincts. Most people won't admit these things easily. In fact, many people spend years avoiding that realization. Because it's easier to blame circumstances than to face uncomfortable truths. But here's where things get real. The moment you take responsibility for your life, not blame, but responsibility, you gain something powerful. Control. Think about that carefully. If everything that hurts you is always someone else's fault, then you're powerless to change anything. But if pain reveals patterns in your own behavior, suddenly you have leverage. You can change the pattern. You can rewrite the story. Now wait, because this next part is important. Pain doesn't just show you what's broken. It also shows you what matters. Think about the things that hurt the most. Usually, those things are connected to something meaningful. Relationships hurt because connection matters. Failure hurts because purpose matters. Rejection hurts because belonging matters. Pain reveals your values. And when you understand your values, life starts becoming clearer. You stop chasing things that don't actually matter to you. You stop forcing yourself into paths that never felt right. You start paying attention to what genuinely feels meaningful. But here's the twist. This clarity rarely arrives during comfortable moments. It usually arrives during the hardest ones. Let me ask you something honestly. Have you ever gone through something painful and later realized it pushed you toward a better direction? Maybe a breakup that eventually led you to someone healthier.
Maybe losing a job that forced you to pursue something more meaningful. Maybe hitting rock bottom, which finally made you change habits you had ignored for years. At the time, those moments didn't feel like gifts. They felt like disasters. But in hindsight, they became turning points. This is the strange paradox of pain. While you're inside it, it feels unbearable. But later, it often becomes the reason you grew. Now here's the realization most people resist. Pain isn't the enemy. Avoidance is. Because avoiding pain prevents the lesson from landing. And when the lesson doesn't land, the experience repeats. Different people, different circumstances, same emotional pattern. That's why some people feel stuck in cycles. The same type of relationship, the same type of disappointment, the same type of frustration. Life keeps presenting the same lesson until it's finally understood. Now imagine something different. Imagine the moment when you finally recognize the pattern. The moment when you say, "Okay, I see what this is trying to teach me." That moment changes everything. Because once the lesson becomes clear, the pain begins to lose its grip. Not instantly, but gradually. You feel lighter, more aware, more in control. And something new begins to emerge. A different version of you. A version that trusts itself more, understands its boundaries, understands its direction. But there's one final realization about pain that most people never discover. And once you understand it, pain stops feeling like something to fear. It starts feeling like something that guides you toward your strongest self.
There's one final lesson pain tries to teach, and most people miss it. Pain reveals who you are becoming, not who you used to be, not who people expected you to be, but who you are slowly transforming into. Think about it. Every difficult experience forces a decision. You either close yourself off, or you grow. You either become more bitter or more aware. You either repeat the same patterns or finally break them. And the truth is, those decisions don't happen in big, dramatic moments. They happen quietly, in small choices. The choice to reflect instead of blame. The choice to learn instead of escape. The choice to move forward instead of staying stuck in resentment. Those small decisions slowly shape a new identity. But here's where the story gets interesting. Because once you begin listening to pain instead of fighting it, something unexpected happens. Your fear of pain begins to disappear. Not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because you realize something powerful. Pain can't destroy you the way you once believed. It can challenge you, stretch you, expose things you'd rather ignore, but it can also strengthen you. And once you understand that, pain loses its power to control you. Think about the strongest people you've ever met. The people who seem calm during chaos, the people who carry quiet confidence. Those people didn't avoid pain. They went through it. They learned from it. They allowed it to shape them. And eventually, the same experiences that once broke them became the foundation of their strength. Now here's something worth asking yourself. If every painful moment in your life carried a hidden lesson, what might your past experiences have been trying to teach you? Take a moment and think about that. The disappointments, the failures, the times life didn't go the way you planned. What if those moments weren't just random hardships? What if they were invitations to grow? Invitations to rethink your direction, your values, your boundaries, your purpose? Most people never stop long enough to ask that question.
They rush forward. They stay busy. They distract themselves. But the people who eventually find clarity do something different. They pause. They reflect. They listen. And slowly, the meaning behind their pain begins to appear. Sometimes the lesson is about self-respect. Sometimes it's about courage. Sometimes it's about letting go of something that was never meant to stay. But whatever the lesson is, once you learn it, something remarkable happens. You stop carrying the same weight. You stop repeating the same cycles. You move forward differently. Not perfect, but wiser. And this is the quiet transformation most people don't notice at first. Pain doesn't just teach you about the world. It teaches you about yourself, about what matters to you, about what you're capable of surviving, about how strong you actually are. And once you truly understand that, something shifts inside you. You stop seeing life as something happening to you. You start seeing it as something shaping you. Every challenge becomes information. Every setback becomes guidance. Every painful moment becomes part of the path that builds your strength. So the next time life hurts, instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" try asking a different question. What is this trying to teach me? Because sometimes the moments that hurt the most are the ones quietly guiding you toward the person you were always meant to become. And if this idea resonated with you, don't just move on and forget it tomorrow. Sit with it. Reflect on it. Let it change how you see the struggles in your own life. And if this conversation felt familiar, if parts of it sounded like your own story, then maybe this isn't the end of the journey. Maybe it's the moment where your understanding of pain finally begins to change. And sometimes, that change is exactly where a stronger life begins.